Yo, it's Sunday. I mean, well, I should have tried to keep the mystery. Whatever. I already laid it out. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another casual conversation with me, your friend Carlz, where I take whatever I try to say in Spanish and just put it up in English, which is kind of, I don't know, and it's not strange, but lately I felt like my ideas have been streamlined of sorts when I jump from Spanish to English. I don't know what that says about me or whatever, but like, it's been an interesting, how can you say, experiment? Yeah, sort of an experiment. Well, today, keeping up with Spooky October, I'm diving into another horror, not only movie, but franchise. So, last month, oh, September is already last month, we saw the end of the main Conjuring. It's like, I don't know if they're gonna keep moving forward with the spin offs, but we saw the ending of the main Conjuring movie series, right? Last Conjuring, finishing with Conjuring the Last Rites, one of the biggest cases of the Warrens and whatnot. There are something really particular that I have to talk about all these movies. So, as usual, I have some disclaimers. I don't believe in the supernatural. I think we are surrounded by energy, which we are, right? Like, I was gonna go with radioactive first, but like, we have the energy of the sun, electricity, everything is waves and energy. So, there are energies that can affect the physical world or whatever, right? But jumping from that to believing there's like an afterlife, ghosts, demons, and everything, that's a big jump. So, even though I don't believe in that, I think it's a great sort of topic to tackle, especially in horror movies. And when The Conjuring 1 came out on 2013, like, it's already a long time ago, more than a decade ago by now, what was the main sort of objective of The Conjuring 1? Whenever I think about it, whenever I think why I love that first movie so much, some sort of like the feelings clash between them. Back in 2013, when The Conjuring 1 came out, it was a movie about a haunted house. But the best thing about it was not necessarily the topic of a haunted house and demons. The Conjuring 1 set up sort of like a beginning of something, an experiment that finally concluded in Last Rites, which was really curious. So, probably people living in the US or more like Northern Hemisphere sort of, I don't know, countries or realities, probably heard more about the Warrens, right? The protagonists of the whole Conjuring saga. These both, what do they call them? Like, paranormal investigators or whatever, right? Played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. So these Warren, Ed and Lorraine, apparently they were pretty famous. So that's another sort of like a disclaimer you have to make. If you didn't grow up knowing about them, uh, the movie beginning with the whole this is based on a real story, it doesn't have the same impact. So what did that do for me as someone that did not know about Ed or Lorraine Warren was that you immediately became a little bit suspicious of the movie when it begins with this is based on a true story. The sort of trick of saying something is based on a true story is that even if it's based on a true story, the story itself doesn't need to be true. That is kind of like the riddle, right? I can say any sort of like stupid or imaginative stuff, and the fact that I said it, that it's real. You see my point? Like, it's based on my story. Me being a real person, it's based on a real story, and that's sort of the whole career of Ed and Lorraine Warren as supernatural investigators, right? It's like, oh, we have like over 2,000 or something cases of paranormal encounters that are based on real on real people telling us these stories. But since this is about the supernatural, none of these stories are actually like provable. Like these are there are no way of proving these stories, which in a sort of ironic way is a leitmotif during the whole saga. They always have to like prove the story is real for the church to do something, which is sort of like a paradox in on itself, right? I'm gonna prove the existence of demons to the church so they can come and exorcise this. But this proof, whatever it is, like, is it enough? How come it's enough for the church and nobody else? But like, whatever. So the point is, going into the Conjuring 1, I fell into this, sorry, into this mindset of reality. And the Conjuring 1 does a really, really, really good job of being this self-contained small movie. It's all about the haunted house. It's all about practical effects. It's all about setting the supernatural. And here is where like the supernatural argument sort of plays on everybody's private minds. Even if you don't believe in it, which I don't know, I'm not gonna say you shouldn't, but the most you can do about the supernatural is believe in it. You cannot prove it, right? But all of us, I said this a little bit during my what its name, Blair Witch commentary. Each and every one of us have the doubt on our minds. If anyone has listened to the band called Iron Maiden, hope you have. And Iron Maiden has this song called Fear of the Dark. And it's curious because for the lyrics of that song, right, it's all about how do you actually feel in this sort of like supernatural situations. Like if you are like on a graveyard, like 2 3 a.m, everything's dark, you're alone, every sound, every nook, like and cranny, like every dark space becomes potential for fear. And that is what the Conjuring 1 did masterfully. It exploited those small corners and the small suspicious moments to create the perfect ambience. And since the movie happens only in this one house, it was like a perfect haunted house movie. It was great. But then you jump into what I found to be the most interesting thing about the Conjuring saga. So you can take the Conjuring 1 and put it like how can you say it? like one of the most I don't know, that's hyperbole, right? But you can put it as one of the greatest horror movies of the 2010s, for sure. It was a great movie. And even from one, we already knew that Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga were the leads of this saga. Like even in one, you see how the chemistry and the performance of both the leads is so amazing. So you have the seed in one about what they want to do with horror, who are these people, and how well they work. So even in one, you already have some not necessarily red flags, but potential red flags for these sort of stories, which to me are basically the usage of the church and general church dialectics, right? It's sort of like cheap. Even in, I don't know, big movies like The Exorcist, right? They sort of force you to accept the speeches of the church to sort of enjoy it, right? And with that I mean like God and the devil and all of that, like arguments that are like highly Catholic in essence. So sort of like accepting that is strange. So again, in Conjuring 1, I'm like, my eyes are like wide open, like trying to pick up how much of that they used. And of course, they used it because it was part of the story, but it was respectfully used. And in the end, it wasn't like preachy. That's the important thing. It didn't seem preachy. Like Ed and Lorraine weren't good guys because they were like soldiers of God or anything. That's an interesting thing that you gotta keep in mind for the rest of the saga. So if we jump from Conjuring 1, I always put like Conjuring in sort of like a weird sort of, you can say, scheme, right? One is one is the original one. It was all about, as I said, practical effects and the haunted house, and then they took the haunted house and they just repeated it in 2. But in 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, they went another way. They went the way of the thriller. There's a deceit. There's like a plan, like something Machiavellical or Is it that in English, Machiavellical? Well, but it's like people conspiring behind the supernatural. So what I mean to when I see this movie as the beginning and the end and the middle is that The Conjuring, curiously enough, shows you the progress of a franchise. Even if the first one was this small practical effect horror movie, the rest shows you how Hollywood works. Having the spin-offs, which I have not seen. Like I really don't care for the spin-offs. It shows you how it generates spin-offs, and it shows you how it basically sort of plays with the genres. Because you could have done, as I said, they have like 2,000 cases, right? The Warrens. So in a way, you could have made 2,000 Conjurings. You could have done 2,000 Conjuring, and one for each sort of case. Yeah, you could have done it, but they sort of knew it. They knew that they couldn't do that all the time, because in all of the movie's beginnings, each case of the 4 chosen for the main, for the 4 Conjuring, not the spin-off, each one of the four cases, they were like introduced by the movie itself. Like, this case will shake the foundations of the Warrens, or like, life would never be the same, The Conjuring, based on true story. So they all sort of, they allegedly picked the higher profile cases. That's sort of the point, right? So if they tried sort of handling different genres and doing different things during the body of the franchise, being that 2 and 3, I rewatched them, both 2 and 3, before 4 came out a couple of weeks ago. And for example, 2 immediately is like a lesser version of 1. Immediately. It sort of shows the weakness of the possibility of them doing a million haunted houses cases. Like, Conjuring 2 is already more CGI, like heavy. It's already, the plot itself is a little bit more convoluted, less magical. In a way, it's good that it shows a different side, because 1 was a lot about like witches and the past, and Conjuring 2 was a little bit more current, like the haunting was real is not the word, but like it was more current, right? It was like not people that lived 200 years ago, but people like live now, like family members of that same family. But Conjuring 2 already sort of like puts another seed into what you can pick up as someone that is seeing a franchise, right? They go, oh, this ghost is being controlled by somebody else. And when you see Conjuring 2, you start thinking, okay, they are building franchise. What are they going to do with it? Are they gonna create a nemesis for the Warrens? Like, oh, these guys have been fighting this demon, I don't know, Agamemnon or something. Like it's gonna be their Thanos, their like I don't know, Lex Luthor, their main antagonist. They introduce the idea, and as soon as they do it, the movie gets a little bit diluted. It gets a little bit not stupid, but it gets too crafty for anyone's liking. I don't think anyone can see that and just go straight up. Oh, that's good, because they make Lorraine's powers like too, like I don't know, like too important. Like she can see everything so clear, then it becomes a little bit strange. So Conjuring 2 sort of like plants more seeds for potential franchises. But the funny thing about it is that that is not the most important seed Conjuring 2 plants. The more important seed that Conjuring 2 plants, and that is like the first sort of like big reveal of Conjuring 2, but at least to me, is how important actually are Ed and Lorraine. Ed and Lorraine during Conjuring 2. Conjuring 2, in a way, is just a character building movie for Ed and Lorraine. So let's dive into that like briefly, because it's something that I keep thinking about all the way until last ride at the end. Ed and Lorraine's character development is not that deep. It's not that interesting, and it's not that how can you say, like, complex. If you jump with that idea from Conjuring 2 to Conjuring 3, you sort of realize how slow it is to build on its main characters, because it has to juggle a strange balance between building on its leads and whichever case they're doing, which takes a long time. So between 2 and 3, you start building this idea that perhaps these movies are not so much about the supernatural. What I mean by this is that even though they don't focus much attention on giving us more details about Ed and Lorraine's life, or like having them like grow as characters, because basically The Conjuring is showing us Ed and Lorraine are on their prime. It's like we're not watching the beginning, the middle, well, we watch it sort of until the end in Last Rites. We're not watching them develop. They are already who they are for the whole franchise. So what are they doing if they're not developing during these first 3 movies? That is when I came with this idea that what I was seeing was sort of like a living tribute, to their relationship and to their like general character. That is sort of like the big revelation, especially when I jump from 2, 3, and eventually 4 Last Rites. What happened? I'm gonna dive straight to Last Rites. What happened to me watching Last Rites was sort of like a revelation in a best sense. And what I mean by this is that I'm not the biggest fan of the Conjuring saga, right? But as I was watching Last Rites, I got completely, not completely, but I got taken and moved by it. I really did. I really did. I was like, man, it's been more than 10 years. We've been watching these movies, and they have been part of like the horror genre general discussion for over 10 years. And watching Ed Warren, Ed and Lorraine again, all they had to do was bring the daughter into the mix, sort of highlight how much time has passed. But all of this time that has passed wasn't to, as I said, talk about their characters' development, or like do any sort of like time-based commentary on characters. neither it was on what they do. None of these movies focus on, okay, let's talk about the supernatural, or like, let's make a case for it, let's defend it, let's attack it. No. The end revelation of Last Ride has nothing to do with ghosts, has nothing to do with horror. It has to do with Ed and Lorraine Warren. And the beginning of the movie shows them sort of in the twilight, like early 90s. I think it's like 86, 87 or something. And it shows the early twilight of the age of it's where people stop believing in the supernatural so much as it was before. Though that's arguable, right? Like even nowadays, 2025, you can find ghost believers, and it's not that hard. But the movie makes that point only to highlight them, Ed and Lorraine. So the supernatural business is like moving out. People don't believe now. People are more cynical now, but they still remain. And why do they still remain? And that is sort of like the big revelation of Last Rites. That sort of shows that the whole franchise is just there to show them as good people. You know, as I said before, like, will they have a big sort of nemesis at the end? And Last Ride does try to do that a little bit. Like introducing the idea that there was like an original demon during their daughter's conception that has been haunting them forever. And, you know, it falls into all of these tropes of like Avengers Endgame or some shit like that, right? So there are like these tropes of the big evils, like we can't defeat it. Even though, ironically, like as I said before, every Conjuring movie begins with this case was the most, the hardest case the Warrens have ever faced. It will change them forever. The Conjuring, brr. Even though they all began like that, movie-wise, you never see this nemesis. You never see this big demon. But Last Ride shows you that it's not really relevant, because what we were doing for over 10 years was this sort of like in a tangent or in a tangential way. That's a word. Make like a biography, you know, or like a tribute to these two people. And I felt really moved by it because, as I said, the movie nor the franchise, well, I don't know the spin-offs, but like the main franchise does not make a strong point out of like, oh, let's talk about the church or let's talk about ghosts. No, it's all about them. It's all about people. So it's really believable when they say like these were just two normal people who believe in the supernatural, and they try to do the best to help people. It's like some sort of like superhero on their own merits, right? Or in their own right. And I like that because after one, I remember researching a little bit about the Warrens since I didn't know anything about them. And of course, being on the field they are in, there was a lot of controversy related to them. About the reality of their cases, about them being like hoaxers? No, like, well, deceivers, like them being full of BS. Which is something that could still be, might as well be, like, we don't know. But the movie is trying to tell us that, regardless of that, these were just people trying to do good. And that revelation on itself, like, it might not be a big revelation, but it gives the movie, especially Last Rites, like a completely non-horror vibe, and it's just so wholesome, like heartwarming, like it's odd. It really is. So I've been watching a lot of horror movies because it's October and I love the genre. And this is not a common thing. Like, at all. like at all. Like it's not a common thing. Like the latest movie that I watched that I might talk about it was like Hereditary, and there's nothing heartwarming about that movie. Even so, this is not a spoiler because since it's based on real life facts and everything. So I kept watching Last Rites and wondering like who's gonna die on it. Like, are they gonna? They were using so many common tropes that I guess like one of the tropes is gonna be one of them is gonna die. And of course, Ed and Lorraine can't die because in reality they die way later, right? So they did use several known tropes for making how do you call it, like not a conclusion, right? But for making the end of a franchise. But they didn't really need to, because the bare realization of 10 years of the Warrens, it they just needed in the movie to mention once, like, we are good people trying to good things, and everything that happened before came flashing back into your mind. Now I'm being like kind of like a fanboy of it, but it's true. Like all the times they could have leave people behind, like every time they sort of doubted, every time they took shit from for whatever they did, you know, a life dedicated to something like this, it's no small thing. Of course, the fact that they live out of it is on itself sort of like I don't know, funny, you know, how they make a life out of the supernatural. That's why I think that's why so many people sort of dislike them or like maybe talk trash about them, because like, oh, they're making money out of this, they are making a living out of this. But funny enough, Last Ride makes a joke about it, like, oh, we're gonna finally write our book and it's gonna be shitty. They make a joke about it, sort of to like undermine the importance of them like making a profit out of it and highlighting the true intention behind it, that it was for them to do good. I never knew them personally, of course. Both of them have passed since then, I'm pretty sure. And as I said, I don't believe in the supernatural. But after a 10 plus year run of this franchise, I see the value in highlighting normal people doing good. I I see the value. I think most of it, of course, is like sort of championed by the performances, especially of Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. They are like amazing on their roles, like amazing. Like I can't praise them enough. I love how they portray them. I like every time they show genuine love and compromise with what they're doing. Every time it just feels real and it feels right. Like it's a great performance. But as I said, that was key, because in the end you realize that the whole franchise was just about that. Was just about making a 10-year 4-movie tribute to two normal people, the Warrens. And I ate it up. So if we see Last Ride just as a movie, yeah, you can see the format getting exhausted and okay, the ghost again. You know, these sort of movies, like haunted house movies, they feel like like being a comedian or like being, you know, Jackass. You know, it's just a bunch of people. They probably sit on these big, I don't know, writing rooms, and they go like, okay, what have we not do? You know, and by four, like I don't know, the toy that comes alive, the something that comes out of the darkness, something, things that are moving, like all of that shit. all of that shit is played by Conjuring 4. It is. So if I hadn't done this sort of like mind switch into seeing this like as a goodbye to these characters, as a final, like honest and good spirited tribute to these real life people, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed this movie. This movie revealed how much I love those characters, how much I bought their performances, and how much I would feel for them to go. That's the truth. You know, it gave me similar vibes to Guardians of the Galaxy, like the last one. Like story wise, you knew that that wasn't really important. You know, being like into the whole Marvel thing, you know that okay, this is not going to be so relevant. No fucking Doctor Doom or whatever. Like this is just going to be a goodbye for these characters. And in that movie, as well as in Conjuring Last Right, you can see a director and a whole like team behind it, saying goodbye to characters that they really like. Just as James Gunn said goodbye to Rocket Raccoon and all of those characters, because you can see the movie being focused on that. That's the same thing in Conjuring Last Rites. You can see it totally, like the writers, the producers, the directors saying like, okay, this is goodbye to the Warrens. We love you guys. Thank you for being good, I guess. So in the end, that basically means that the movie as a horror movie, it ain't that good. Because it isn't. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that what I did see in The Conjuring as a franchise began as something and end up as something else. That something else is not horror oriented, which makes the horror elements of the movies kind of lacking. And I think you can tell by the general like reception, especially of 2 and 3, lukewarm at best, because people were trying to see the horror in them, in these convoluted plots about ghosts and whatnot, but it ain't there. That's why I don't believe in the supernatural, basically. Like, how much of a movie can you make like, okay, I'm being haunted. I'm being haunted. Let's call the church. And out comes like a priest. And they go like, by the power of Christ. And then it stopped. The end. How much of a movie can you make out of it? It's really about nitpicking and like choosing what to focus on. And as I said, going back to Conjuring 1, it was a brilliant thing to focus on the Warrens, to make them not into superheroes, but into heroes, regular people being good, doing good, despite of whatever context they're doing. You know? And that's basically what it is. That is basically what I wanted to say. I think the Conjuring saga is a great example of a franchise being inserted in Hollywood, following all the trends and tropes, doing all the stupid shit. Like, how many like movies about the fucking doll? There are like 3. You know, they do the exploitation of the tropes and the characters. They do that, but in the end, it has a good heart. And I get that's what I wanna save out of it. That is what I wanna keep, and that is what I wanna defend about it. I wanna defend this franchise and these movies' good, well intended heart and spirit, regardless on the supernatural being real, regardless on them being I don't know, like fake, regardless on this being a Hollywood franchise, regardless of that, and regardless of it being horror. As I said, not all horror it has this really warm heart in it. In the end, I don't know if that's a good thing to say about a horror movie. Oh, I went to watch this horror movie and I felt so warm and fuzzy, and it was so heartwarming and cute that I felt moved by it. I don't know if that's a good thing to say about a horror movie, but you can say that about Conjuring 1. You can definitely say that about Conjuring 1. Like, well, what happened from then to 10 years? It's 13, 23, 25, 12 years. What are 12 years in ghost time? Nothing, right? Ghosts don't care about no time, and I am afraid of no ghost because I don't believe in them. But anyways, The Conjuring, you were good. As I said, I have no idea whether they're gonna keep doing it, whether now the daughter is gonna pick up. Like, I should research that. I should see if the daughter kept doing the Warrens' mom and dad's work, because if she did, I can totally see Conjuring daughter revenge. But if she didn't, you can see like the Nun 6 and the Doll Thing 5 or whatever. But as an end to a really heartwarming, interesting, and even at some point groundbreaking horror saga, The Conjuring Last Rites, it's a fitting end to 12 years of the Warrens. I'm not gonna say whether, like, I'm not gonna say it's good or bad that they did what they did. I'm not gonna say it's real. Like, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna say that these 4 movies are one of the most interesting biographical tributes to living people doing good that you can get from horror. Keep in mind, horror. But that's it. I'm not gonna talk about the Warrens no more until the next movie comes out. But for now, that's my time. And if you see something moving, it was probably the wind. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.